What if the world's most beloved YouTuber, the man who gives away islands, hands out Teslas like candy, and claims to dedicate his life to helping people, wasn't as perfect as he seemed? Because let's be honest, when you hear the name MrBeast, what do you think of first? Probably a massive thumbnail with Jimmy's wide-eyed face, promising a giveaway so big it feels impossible. Maybe you think of a room stacked with cash, a giant Willy Wonka chocolate factory, or someone walking away with a brand new car just for competing in a challenge. To millions, he isn't just a YouTuber, he's a modern-day superhero. A digital Robin Hood who takes the massive ad revenue of YouTube and redistributes it in the flashiest, most entertaining way possible. $100,000 for staying inside a circle. I'll pay your rent for life. Here's an entire house, no strings attached. It sounds too good to be true, and for years fans wanted to believe it wasn't. But here's the problem with being on top. Eventually, everyone starts looking for cracks. And when people started digging into MrBeast's empire, they didn't just find cracks, they found entire fault lines. Former employees accused him of manipulating contests, staging giveaways, even dabbling in what some called fraudulent lottery schemes. Critics claimed he was exploiting people's struggles for views, turning human suffering into a billion-dollar brand. Even his closest friends became lightning rods for controversy, sparking online wars that had nothing to do with the videos at all. And then there's Jimmy himself. On camera, he's the golden boy of YouTube, generous, humble, endlessly cheerful. But behind the scenes, his personality has been called cold, robotic, even unsettling. He talks about millions of dollars like pocket change, pressures celebrities to donate money on live streams, and sometimes slips into awkward or bizarre behavior that makes even his biggest fans question what's really going on. It's a bizarre duality. On one hand, MrBeast is out here building wells in Africa, giving clean drinking water to communities, and raising tens of millions of dollars for charity. On the other, he's accused of running his empire like a ruthless corporation, where kindness isn't just kindness, it's business. And that's the real question. Is MrBeast a genuine force for good, or has he simply mastered the art of selling generosity as a product? Because if you listen closely, you'll notice something strange. Every time a controversy dies down, Jimmy comes back even bigger. When fans questioned his giveaways, he built an entire food empire. When critics said his charity was just a PR stunt, he doubled down with global campaigns like Team Trees and Team Water. Every scandal, every allegation, every awkward live stream moment, instead of sinking him, it somehow adds to his myth. It's almost like he's untouchable. But is he really? Because the bigger you get, the harder the fall. And when you're playing with billions of views, millions of dollars, and the fragile trust of an entire generation, the stakes couldn't be higher. So today we're going to peel back the layers, the giveaways, the philanthropy, the lawsuits, the scandals, the awkward robotic personality, and we're going to ask the question nobody really wants to face. What if MrBeast isn't the hero we all think he is? Because for the first time, the internet's golden boy isn't just being celebrated, he's being investigated. And the truth, whichever way you look at it, will shock you. Before the world knew him as MrBeast, before the Teslas and islands and multi-million-dollar giveaways, Jimmy Donaldson was just another awkward teenager sitting in a small bedroom in North Carolina, staring at a computer screen and wondering how to make strangers on the internet care about his videos. He wasn't born into money, and he wasn't born into fame. His childhood wasn't filled with cameras, red carpets, or even the faintest clue that one day he'd become the most powerful name in YouTube history. No, Jimmy's early life looked a lot more ordinary. Small town, public school, a kid with average grades, no particular talent for sports, and an obsession with one thing: figuring out YouTube's secrets. While most teenagers were outside hanging with friends, Jimmy spent hours buried in analytics. He studied every successful video like a scientist in a lab. What makes people click? What keeps them watching? Why do some videos blow up while others get buried? He wasn't chasing fame for the sake of it. He was obsessed with the puzzle. And little by little, he started experimenting. The early MrBeast channel was rough. His first uploads barely cracked a few dozen views. He posted random gaming clips, short skits, anything he could think of. But then slowly an idea formed. If nobody was watching him, what if he made videos so extreme, so unusual, that people couldn't look away? That's how the experiments began. Counting to 100,000 on camera, saying Logan Paul 100,000 times, reading every word in the dictionary, watching paint dry. It sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, these challenges were unlike anything else on YouTube. They weren't polished. They weren't flashy, but they had one thing every viral video needs. They made people curious, and curiosity spread. Suddenly, Jimmy wasn't just another faceless gamer in the endless sea of channels. He was the crazy challenge guy, the one who pushed his body, his mind, and his patience to absurd limits, all for a video. It was exhausting, it was risky, but it worked. Viewers weren't just entertained, they were fascinated. Then Jimmy unlocked the piece of the puzzle that would change everything. Money. Not money from YouTube. He didn't have much at the time, but money as content. He realized that giving away money was the ultimate clickbait, because it wasn't just about shock value, it was about emotion. When viewers saw a pizza delivery driver walk away with thousands of dollars, or a homeless man handed a stack of cash, it wasn't just entertaining, it was heartwarming. And that's when MrBeast stopped being just another YouTuber. He became a storyteller of generosity. By 2018, the formula was unstoppable. Last to leave the circle wins $10,000, giving random strangers thousands of dollars, tipping waitresses with a new car, each video bigger, louder, more insane than the last. Audiences couldn't get enough. Brands noticed, sponsors started lining up, and with every deal signed, Jimmy reinvested everything back into the next stunt. Bigger challenges, bigger giveaways, more outrageous ideas. While other creators pocketed their money, Jimmy doubled down. He wasn't building a channel anymore, he was building an empire. By 2021, MrBeast wasn't just a YouTube celebrity, he was the YouTube celebrity. A global icon with billions of views, millions of subscribers, and the kind of influence most traditional celebrities could only dream of. His reach extended far beyond the platform. Merch, Feastables chocolate bars, Beast burger chains, massive sponsorship deals, and eventually a multi-million-dollar partnership with Amazon Prime. On the surface, it looked like the ultimate fairy tale. A small-town kid who figured out the system, worked harder than anyone else, and turned himself into the face of an entire generation of creators. But here's the thing about fairy tales. They always hide a darker side, because behind the insane challenges and viral giveaways, not everything was as pure as it seemed. Rumors started bubbling, allegations began to surface, and soon people would start asking a dangerous question. Was MrBeast really giving to the world, or was the world just giving to him? Every empire looks spotless from the outside, shiny, polished, perfect. But if you've been on the internet long enough, you know the truth. The bigger the empire, the more skeletons it hides. And for MrBeast, those skeletons started talking. The whispers didn't come from rival YouTubers desperate for clout. They didn't come from jealous competitors trying to bring him down. No, they came from somewhere much closer, somewhere that made people stop and listen. They came from inside the Beast's own camp. Former employees began stepping forward with stories that painted a very different picture of Jimmy Donaldson's empire. One that looked less like a family of friends making fun videos and more like a high-pressure corporate machine where generosity was just another business strategy. The most explosive claims? That many of the giveaways, the ones fans cried over, the ones that made headlines, weren't as spontaneous or random as they appeared. Some workers alleged that challenges were quietly rigged, with winners chosen behind the scenes, or prizes promised on camera never actually delivered. To millions of viewers, the videos showed life-changing moments, but according to those who worked behind the scenes, the reality wasn't always so magical. Then came the allegations that sounded like something out of a courtroom drama. Accusations of illegal lotteries. The way some giveaways were structured, critics argued, looked suspiciously like gambling. If you had to spend money or jump through certain hoops for a chance to win, wasn't that essentially running a lottery without a license? For a brand as big as MrBeast, that wasn't just a small mistake. That was potentially a serious crime. But it didn't stop there. One ex-staffer claimed the company sold fake signatures, artificially inflating the value of supposed collectibles. Another accused the team of shady business practices behind the merch empire. And together, these stories started to add up to something alarming. The idea that MrBeast's brand of generosity might have been less about kindness and more about carefully engineered illusion. Now, to be fair, Jimmy and his defenders pushed back. They argued that disgruntled ex-workers often exaggerate and that when you run a company this massive, not everyone leaves happy. But perception is everything online. And once these claims were out there, the seed of doubt had been planted, and fans couldn't ignore the contradictions. How could the same man who gave away entire houses be accused of cutting corners on smaller promises? How could the guy who branded himself as the most generous person on YouTube be called a fraud by people who worked in his own warehouse? Worse, the allegations started spreading to news outlets, sparking debates that went far beyond YouTube. Was MrBeast actually gaming the system? Was his generosity a marketing strategy, more about viral thumbnails than real kindness? For a few months, the internet was buzzing with questions. Some fans defended him passionately. Of course it's real. Why would anyone fake something like that? Others weren't so sure. If even half of this is true, then everything we thought we knew about him is a lie. And then came the scariest part for Jimmy. Sponsors noticed. When corporations hear words like fraud or illegal lottery, they don't stick around to see if the rumors are true. Millions of dollars in potential deals suddenly hung in the balance, all because of voices from inside his own circle. This wasn't just bad PR. This was a storm that could sink the ship. But for Jimmy, it was only the beginning. Because while employee allegations put cracks in the armor, what came next threatened to blow the whole facade apart. Because the controversy wasn't just professional anymore, it was about the people closest to him. And that's when the Chris Tyson saga exploded. For years, Chris Tyson wasn't just a sidekick in MrBeast videos. He was family. The goofy, down-to-earth friend who cracked jokes, competed in challenges, and gave the channel that relatable, "We're just a bunch of friends messing around" energy. If Jimmy was the mastermind, Chris was the heart. Fans adored him. He wasn't just a background character. He was part of what made MrBeast's empire feel real. But in 2023, Chris Tyson became the center of a storm that no one saw coming. Chris announced publicly that he was transitioning, opening up about deeply personal changes in his life. For most people, it was a brave and human moment. For others, it was a lightning rod. Almost overnight, Chris wasn't just Jimmy's best friend. He was a trending topic on Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube, dragged into a culture war he never asked for. And by extension, so was MrBeast. The internet erupted. Some fans cheered Chris on, celebrating his courage and praising MrBeast for standing by his friend. But others were less kind. Rumors flew across social media that Chris's presence might hurt the channel's family-friendly brand. Comment sections filled with speculation about whether sponsors would pull out, whether subscribers would drop, and whether MrBeast would be forced to choose between his friend and his empire. Suddenly, what had been a private personal journey turned into a public referendum on the future of the world's biggest YouTube channel. And all eyes turned to Jimmy. Would he distance himself from Chris to protect his billion-dollar brand? Or would he take a stand, knowing it could cost him deals, subscribers, maybe even his crown as YouTube's king? At first, Jimmy was quiet, unusually quiet for a man known for quick tweets and sharp comebacks. That silence only fueled the speculation. Was he avoiding the controversy? Was he calculating a business move? Or was he just protecting his friend from the storm? Finally, he broke the silence. In a single tweet, Jimmy made it clear. He supported Chris. Period. "Chris is my friend," he said, "and I'm going to support them no matter what." It should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. Because the internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive easily. Critics accused Jimmy of playing it safe, of being too robotic in his defense. Fans noted how uncomfortable he looked in videos with Chris afterward, speculating that the friendship was strained. Others insisted the opposite, that Jimmy's loyalty proved he wasn't just a businessman, but someone who valued people over profit. No matter where you stood, one thing was undeniable. The controversy shook the MrBeast empire. It wasn't just about giveaways or challenges anymore. It was about identity, loyalty, and whether the world's biggest creator could weather the kind of backlash that has destroyed celebrities before him. And in the chaos, another question started to bubble up. If Jimmy could survive something this polarizing, was he untouchable? Could anything bring him down? Because while the Chris Tyson controversy dominated headlines, another figure was preparing to enter the battlefield. A YouTuber no one expected, with accusations so bold that even Jimmy's billions couldn't shield him from the fallout. And that figure went by one name, Dogpack. While Chris Tyson's story was still dominating timelines, another storm was brewing. One that didn't come from within the MrBeast crew, but from outside. And this one had the potential to shatter Jimmy's entire empire. The man behind it wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't even a massive creator. His name was Dogpack, a mid-tier YouTuber who seemed to come out of nowhere with a mission: to take down MrBeast. At first, people didn't take him seriously. After all, countless small channels have tried to stir up drama with bigger names just to grab attention. But Dogpack wasn't just ranting into a camera. He came armed with what he claimed was evidence. And the internet loves evidence, because while Dogpack's allegations created chaos, they didn't destroy MrBeast. If anything, they made him stronger, forcing him to double down on his brand and remind the world why he was still on top. And that's exactly what he did. Jimmy pivoted away from the drama and towards something even bigger, something that would dominate headlines, pull in millions of dollars, and remind everyone that no matter what people said, MrBeast was still the king of YouTube. That something was his boldest project yet, a mission to save millions of lives with clean drinking water. By the time Dogpack's expose fizzled out, MrBeast knew one thing for sure. The best defense against criticism wasn't silence, it was spectacle. And so, instead of dwelling on the past, Jimmy pivoted toward his most ambitious project yet, one that would touch millions of lives, generate global headlines, and cement his reputation not just as a YouTuber, but as a world changer. That project was called Team Water. The idea was simple, the execution, monumental. Jimmy announced that he and his team were raising $40 million to provide clean drinking water to people around the world who didn't have access to it. The pitch was brilliant in its simplicity. Every $1 donated equals 1 year of clean water for one person. It was marketing genius because suddenly generosity had a measurable price tag. If you gave $5, you could imagine 5 people drinking clean water for an entire year. If you donated $1,000, that was 1,000 years of clean water. The numbers didn't just sound good, they made donors feel powerful, like they were directly changing the world with each dollar. And the visuals sold the dream. In video after video, we saw water tanks being built in villages, children smiling as they tasted clean water for the first time, communities celebrating as faucets finally ran clear. For audiences, it was an emotional gut punch. Here was their favorite YouTuber, not just making entertainment, but saving lives. The response was immediate. Millions of dollars poured in. Fellow creators joined the cause. Brands lined up to attach their names. It wasn't just a charity, it was a movement. But like every MrBeast project, the bigger it got, the more questions it raised. Critics pounced on the math. How could Jimmy confidently say that $1 equals 1 year of water? Where did that figure come from? What about the costs of maintaining these systems, repairing equipment, or preventing corruption in local governments? Real-world charity isn't that simple, but Jimmy made it sound like a vending machine. Insert $1, out comes a year of water. But the way Jimmy went about it didn't look inspiring. It looked aggressive. Instead of casually asking for support, he began calling people out, reading names of creators who hadn't donated, asking them, live in front of tens of thousands of viewers, why they hadn't coughed up a cent yet. Imagine logging into a stream and suddenly hearing your name being read aloud, followed by Jimmy Donaldson himself demanding, "Where's your 100 grand? You pledged it. Why haven't you paid?" Some laughed nervously and played along. Others squirmed in visible discomfort. For a few, it turned into an outright argument. The tone shifted from charity to confrontation. Like Jimmy wasn't raising money for a cause, but collecting debts. And it wasn't just small amounts. He was asking for huge donations. $50,000, $100,000, even pushing some to go higher. When one streamer offered $15,000, a massive sum for most people, Jimmy brushed it off as barely a dent compared to the $8 million goal. The internet didn't miss that moment. Clips went viral, with fans and critics debating the ethics. Was this really charity, or was it peer pressure in its purest form? To Jimmy, this might have felt like friendly banter. To others, it felt manipulative. After all, these weren't just casual conversations. They were live, on-camera exchanges, broadcast to millions. Saying no didn't just mean disappointing Jimmy. It meant looking selfish in front of the entire internet. And here's where things got even messier. The headlines that followed didn't celebrate the donors, they celebrated Jimmy. Even if another creator gave 6 figures, the story was always, MrBeast raises millions for Team Water. The credit flowed upward and the donors were left as footnotes. So why donate at all if all the glory goes to someone else? Some creators openly voiced this frustration, saying Jimmy was leveraging his influence to make them look bad if they refused and irrelevant if they agreed. Either way, MrBeast won. This created a bigger question. Is pressuring others to give still generosity? Or is it something else, a kind of digital shakedown, where the social cost of saying no is greater than the financial cost of saying yes? Critics labeled it performative charity, a publicity stunt wrapped in altruism. Sure, the water projects were real, but the way Jimmy demanded money from peers felt like a mix between philanthropy and extortion. And to make matters worse, his behavior on these streams often came off as odd. He'd pressure someone into donating tens of thousands, then immediately downplay it as insignificant. He'd joke about shaking people down, like a debt collector. He even admitted that some of the people he pressured he'd never spoken to before. This wasn't the warm, smiling Jimmy from the YouTube thumbnails. This was a businessman, a salesman, a collector. Fans began asking, if this is how he treats fellow millionaires, how does he really see the rest of us? Because charity wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to feel like a transaction, a scoreboard, or a contest of who could flex the hardest. And yet, under MrBeast's leadership, that's exactly how it looked. But as uncomfortable as these shakedowns were, they weren't the strangest part of the story. Because soon, the internet stopped talking about the donations and started talking about something else entirely, MrBeast's personality. Was he really the genuine, kind-hearted guy people thought he was? Or was he something else, awkward, robotic, maybe even a little unsettling? That's where the cracks in Jimmy's public persona became impossible to ignore. Money, fame, and controversy are one thing, but sometimes what unsettles people most about MrBeast isn't the millions of dollars flying across his channel or the questionable charity tactics. It's him. On camera, Jimmy Donaldson is supposed to be the embodiment of YouTube positivity, smiling, energetic, endlessly excited about giving things away. But if you watch closely, there's something off, something that fans have started pointing out more and more. Some say he feels almost too polished, like his emotions are carefully programmed for maximum effect. Others joke that he's not a real person, comparing him to an AI or a corporate robot built in a lab. A strange hybrid between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, someone who talks about millions of dollars as casually as most people talk about lunch. And the weirdest part? Sometimes the mask slips. Clips from live streams and behind-the-scenes footage show Jimmy making bizarre comments that feel miles away from his wholesome image. Jokes about snakes attacking his body in inappropriate places. Awkward conversations about crude topics that clash with his family-friendly brand. Strange laughter at moments that weren't funny. Viewers who once saw him as the perfect nice guy started asking if maybe, just maybe, he was trying a little too hard to seem normal. It didn't take long for the internet to pounce. Meme creators ran wild, turning Jimmy into a caricature of an emotionless machine. Parody channels like Meat Canyon portrayed him as a soulless figure who uses kindness as a mask to hide his greed. In these animations, his wide-eyed excitement became sinister, his generosity became exploitation, and his fans became victims. And disturbingly, a lot of people started agreeing, because when you strip away the flashy editing, the giveaways, and the screaming thumbnails, what do you really see? A man who has built his entire life around views, retention, and algorithm mastery. A man who studies his audience like a science project, who reinvests every penny into making the next viral stunt. Admirable, sure, but also unnerving, because it raises a question nobody really wants to answer. Is Jimmy Donaldson even capable of turning it off? That robotic intensity bleeds into how he talks about money too. For Jimmy, $10,000 is pocket change, a casual throwaway in the middle of a sentence. For most of his audience, that's life-changing. The disconnect between his world and everyone else's grows bigger every year, and the more detached he sounds, the more people wonder if he truly understands the difference. Even fans have admitted that something about his demeanor creeps them out. The way his eyes dart around in interviews, the way his laugh sometimes feels forced, the way he talks about giving away millions like he's reading a grocery list. It's not evil, it's not malicious, but it feels inhuman. And that's the irony, isn't it? The man branded as the humanity guy, the YouTuber who saves lives and changes futures, sometimes comes across as anything but human. He's made kindness into a brand, turned generosity into a business model. And while it inspires millions, it also makes millions more question whether it's all just one big act. Because if Jimmy is genuine, then he's one of the most important creators of our time. But if he isn't, if the awkwardness, the robotic tendencies, and the calculated generosity are all part of the machine, then maybe MrBeast isn't the savior we think he is. Maybe he's the perfect product of YouTube itself, a man so optimized for content that the human underneath barely shows. And that disconnect was about to come into sharper focus. Because just when people thought they'd seen the strangest side of Jimmy, a new rumor swept across the internet. A rumor that didn't question his personality, it questioned the very core of his philanthropy. And it all started with 100 wells in Uganda. By now, MrBeast had built himself into something bigger than a YouTuber. He wasn't just handing out cars or making people compete for money. He was branding himself as a global humanitarian. And nothing captured that image more than his Ugandan Wells project. In 2023, Jimmy uploaded one of his most ambitious videos yet, building 100 clean water wells across Uganda and Kenya. It was framed as life-changing, a project that would provide safe drinking water to thousands of people who desperately needed it. The video was pure emotional impact. Children filling buckets with clean water, families cheering as taps ran clear for the first time, communities gathering to celebrate something many of us take for granted. Viewers were floored. The video racked up tens of millions of views. Fans called it one of his most important projects ever. For once, it seemed like everyone was in agreement. This was MrBeast at his best. But then, the backlash started. Rumors began spreading online that many of the wells had already broken down. Posts circulated claiming the pumps no longer worked, that communities were once again drinking unsafe water, that Jimmy had swept in for the content and then abandoned the people he claimed to help. For critics, it was the smoking gun. Here was proof, they said, that MrBeast's philanthropy was just a show, that he was more interested in viral thumbnails than long-term impact, that his supposed charity was really just content. And once the cameras stopped rolling, the people were forgotten. And the story caught fire. News outlets picked it up. Comment sections exploded. The question wasn't just whether the wells worked. The question was whether MrBeast had exploited an entire country for views. Jimmy didn't stay silent this time. He fought back, hard. He insisted the wells were real, maintained, and fully operational. To prove it, he sent teams back to Africa to document every single one, filming villagers using them, showing the pumps still running, the tanks still standing. According to him, every claim about the wells failing was false. It was just another attempt to tear him down. But even with evidence on his side, the damage was already done. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. People wanted to believe the worst. The idea that a YouTuber had swooped into Africa, filmed emotional footage for clicks, and then vanished was too juicy to ignore. It fit perfectly into the narrative his critics had been building for years. That MrBeast's empire wasn't about generosity, it was about optics. And that's what made the backlash so dangerous. It didn't matter that the wells were still standing. What mattered was that millions of people were ready to assume they weren't. That even when Jimmy was telling the truth, his reputation was so tangled in controversy that many couldn't tell the difference anymore. Think about that. A man builds 100 working wells, something most governments and NGOs struggle to achieve, and still, half the internet insists it's a scam. That says less about the wells and more about how deeply polarized Jimmy's image has become. To his supporters, the wells proved he was a modern-day saint. To his critics, they were proof of his performative philanthropy. And to everyone else, they were a reminder that even the best intentions can look suspicious when billions of dollars and billions of views are involved. Because at the heart of it all lies a paradox. MrBeast has undeniably helped people. He's given strangers life-changing money, built infrastructure, donated food, and paid medical bills. But he's also profited from every single act of kindness, turning generosity into a business model. So the question isn't just whether the wells work. The question is whether we trust him when he says they do. And that's the danger of being MrBeast. The bigger you get, the less people believe you. The more you give, the more people suspect you're taking something in return. By the time the dust settled on the Ugandan wells backlash, one thing was certain. Jimmy Donaldson had become more than a creator. He was now a symbol. To some, he symbolized hope. To others, hypocrisy. And that's why his story isn't just about YouTube. It's about us, about how we view wealth, generosity, and the fine line between kindness and spectacle in the digital age. Because whether you see MrBeast as a hero or a villain, one thing is undeniable. He has changed the game forever. So, who is MrBeast really? The generous kid from North Carolina who turned YouTube into a platform for good? Or the cold, calculating businessman who turned kindness into a billion-dollar brand? Maybe the answer is both. Maybe Jimmy Donaldson is the ultimate reflection of the internet itself, capable of unbelievable generosity and shocking exploitation, sometimes in the very same moment. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you love him or hate him. MrBeast has changed YouTube forever. The only question left is, when the cameras stop rolling, what side of Jimmy will remain?